Hey, this is Don from Padlock Technologies again with another video. Today we are going to talk about Meraki. Uh, Meraki is quote unquote the king of cloud networking. Now, I say quote because depending on who you ask, they might say something like Arista or something like that. But we are talking about in general here, right? From a branding perspective, Meraki is pretty known for cloud networking. Now, fun fact: Meraki was not a Cisco in-house implementation. It was another company at first, and then, as usual, big companies acquire little companies, and then Cisco started innovating a little bit more on the original company's um, original IP and product and stuff like that, which is good. Again, it's capitalism. It's great. Big companies acquire little companies and then they keep on with the innovation. But when we're talking about in the space, Meraki is pretty much like the go-to for any kind of cloud competitor right now, cloud networking kind of thing. When it comes to like campus, right? When it comes to campus, Meraki is pretty much the king of the cloud networking space. Now, they do have competition slowly but surely nibbling at their heels, and one of them is Unified Ubiquity's ecosystem. Now, I did do an overview on Ubiquity's ecosystem. If you haven't seen that, I'm going to put a video up here somewhere. That's going to give you an overview of the Ubiquity platform, and I actually say, is Ubiquity the new Meraki? Now, with that being said, before we get into this video, if you like the content after you finish watching this video, please share, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Doesn't cost you anything but a click. So, first things first, let's talk about design and where I usually see Meraki the most. We'll do the whiteboard, and then we'll go into the lab so I can show you what Meraki actually looks like. So let's get here. So, here we go. Cisco Meraki. And let's just make sure Cisco Meraki. So, where do you see Meraki the most? Most of the times, you'll see it in this type of design. So you will have, if it's at the campus, you will have something here like switch stack virtual. So this would be a C9500 or something like that, or 445 in that realm. If you're using VSS, something is definitely wrong with you if you're using VSS in 2025, because that is old technology. You need to do a network refresh if you're using VSS. Most of the time, you're going to use switch stack virtual in your core or collapse core kind of design. And then you will see a Meraki stack like that. At the axis layer is where you're going to see Meraki when it comes to switching, right? You'll see it like this, all right? Or you will see this, because you will see this in environments as well. So this is VPC. So this is where your Nexus comes in, like your 9K. And then you will have the same, from a switching perspective, stack like that, right? You'll also see, like, from the AP perspective, let's say this AP's down here. From the AP perspective, you will see Meraki equipment. Now, when I say Meraki equipment, you notice I'm not saying MS, right? Which is typically your Meraki nomenclature. MS this, MS that, MS this, MS that. Well, this is one of the innovations here from Cisco. Now you can use catalyst switches, or your normal traditional catalyst, this is quote unquote, or catalyst APs, like the 91, I believe it's the 9161s or the 9170, right? And those are dual platform, depending on how you uh, do DHCP, right? So in your DHCP, normally if you had a WLC, you would put the option there to say, here's where the WLC is at. And then now that is a Cisco controlled AP. But if you don't have that, then it goes into Meraki mode, and then it goes up to the Meraki cloud, and you manage it that way. So Cisco has, I think that's a great thing that Cisco has done, is now you can get Meraki brand, or you get Catalyst branded stuff, but you can manage it through Meraki or just through Cisco environment, um, local management without, you know, having to get Meraki branded stuff. Okay. Now, the reason why people usually do Meraki at the AP and the access layer and not the core layer or collapse core layer is because they want more control at the collapse core, right? You don't really want to, from a routing perspective, it gets a little hairy when you have a layer three core and controlled by Meraki. There's a lot of things that once you are in the Meraki ecosystem, it's not as fluid as the CLI on box kind of thing, right? So most people will say, okay, well, the access layer, I'm just that's closer to the users. We can do 802.1x and stuff like that. I can simplify the configurations by just having Meraki, quote unquote, Meraki switches at the access layer, but everything else going upstream will just be my normal, 9500s CLI, non-Meraki stuff. My firewalls, maybe like, FTDs or secure firewalls or Fortinets or Palo Alto, something upstream. They'll do that, but anything at the access layer will be all Meraki, right? Where is this not going to work? Okay. Well, when you introduce something called Catalyst Center, you're going to run into a problem, right? Because now you can't manage these boxes with Catalyst Center and with Meraki. So you're going to have to choose, right? So if anybody's out there thinking about doing SDA or managing switches with Catalyst Center, Meraki is not going to be what you're going to do, right? Now, you may still want to do that from an AP perspective because it's just easier to manage it in the cloud. But if you really want to get the full functionality of something like Catalyst Center and a SDA Fabric, you're going to have a WLC, and then you can do over the top or inline with your AP. So everything is managed in one area. You don't want to get into the situation where you're managing different pieces of your network in different management areas because then it becomes an administrative headache. But this is normally what you're going to see, right? Now, the one thing I do want to bring up here is you can manage catalyst switches traditionally, catalyst switches in Meraki, right? There's two modes. There's monitor mode and there is Meraki manage mode. The difference between the two is when you go to Meraki manage mode, you lose all access to the CLI and all your configurations have to be done through Meraki. So you need to make a choice here and understand like, hey, once I do this, I'm not gonna be able to do anything in the CLI. Am I okay with that? If you're okay with that, fine, go do it. Do what you gotta do, but you're gonna deal with the limitations of the Meraki platform at that point, right? Case in point, if you're doing ICE and you're pushing out DACLs in your normal Catalyst environment, well, Meraki doesn't understand DACLs. So you're going to have to do this thing called filter ID at this point, which is going to call a group policy that you configure in Meraki, right? No longer are you going to be able to push dynamic ACLs. If you just do monitoring, you can because you still have access to CLI. You're just monitoring it. You're not actually controlling it. So with that being said, let's get into this lab and take a quick look at what the Meraki platform looks like. All right, all right, all right. So here is the Meraki platform. I know you guys are like, how do I know all this stuff? Again, to anybody that's studying, you can't be, and you want to be a network engineer, you can't be one, a one ecosystem type of person, at least nowadays, because most environments are going to be multi-vendor. So the more you know, the more value you become. And plus, this is always the always keep learning that I keep telling you guys. Always keep learning. It doesn't have to always be one vendor. Learn multiple vendors. You need to be able to, you have to like this stuff in order to stay in this game for a long time. So again, to anybody that's studying out there that wants to be, move up the ranks, learn as much as you possibly can. Right? You got to be in love with this stuff in order to move up. All right. So we have our one organization. Kind of looks similar to, like I said, the Ubiquity video, but in Ubiquity, you have Site Manager. They don't have anything called Site Manager. In the Meraki world, it's mainly organizations. Now, organizations have their own separate network, and multiple organizations, if you have them in your environment, they can't talk to each other. Okay. Now, networks within an organization can talk to each other, with Auto VPN. If you're going to do like a head DC and then you have brand sites, you can use Auto VPN for that. That is similar to Site Magic in Unify. Again, if you watch that Unify video or Ubiquity video that I pointed in the beginning, I do have some videos on Site Magic as well. You can watch it. It's literally the same thing. That's why I said Meraki's kind of the king right now, because everybody looked at Meraki and pretty much try to create their own Meraki environment. Where people, for micro businesses, people that are like within the 5, maybe 10 employees range, the reason why they go Ubiquity is because, let's be honest here, the licensing, right? You can get gear that's comparable in price to Unify, but some people don't like the licensing kind of situation and they just can't afford it, and that's fine. You just got to go with something that you can get. Now you're going to lose things like, new features may come out slower because they don't have the budget for R&D and stuff like that. You may not get the good support if something goes wrong because, Ubiquity doesn't have that licensing structure to it for the majority of their stuff. They have licensing for like, you know, if you want to subscribe to their IPS kind of functionality and stuff like that, or their phone system, there they have that. But in terms of like licensing equipment and different features and stuff like that, they don't have that in their environment. Also, they don't have their stacking ability is not for their normal switch line. They have an enterprise line that stacking is coming, but it's not out there yet. So if you need to do switch stacking, you're kind of out of like, Ubiquity is not going to be where you want to go. But anyway, kind of similar in terms of what you need to do, how you move around. So you have your different networks. I only have lab here, and this is my lab network. So if I go into my lab network, I have two firewalls that are, one's in a warm spare. I'll do a video about that later. That's just the overview. So basically, warm spare in the Meraki world is HA, right? So if you do HA on a secure firewall, HA on a Fortinet, HA on Palo Alto, Meraki calls it warm spare. That's all it is. Now, they run it a little bit differently, and again, I'll do a video on that later, but they run a little bit differently. Now, here is my one PC, my test PC, and it's in my corporate network, which I just made up a corporate network, and you see I have an MS. Now, the MS, this is the actual Meraki switch, quote unquote, and this is the MS 350. The good thing is it tells you where it's plugged in at, gives you the MAC address, and I can see a whole bunch of stuff here. Now, from a assurance standpoint, this is just, overview of what's going on, any alerts. Don't know why that just came up. Any alerts or anything like that, any kind of health score, anything down, tells you, what kind of clients I got, any impacts, stuff like that, network devices, anything that's down. Right now, everything's good. So I don't really have to worry about that. The security in SD-WAN is for the firewall here. So if I look, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. VPN status, appliance, firewalling, DHCP, any kind of routing you want to do. You want to do Active Directory or integrated with Active Directory, any kind of traffic steering, access control list, splash pages, wireless concentrator, doesn't really matter. You can do it on here. Now, as you can see on the left-hand side, I only have security, SD-WAN, and switching. That's because I'm waiting for an AP. Once I get the AP, you will see wireless here, right? I'll have the wireless functionality to control like SSIDs and pointing at the ICE and stuff like that, but I only have firewalls and switching, so I can't really do anything there. From a firewall perspective, pretty easy on the firewalling. Now, the one thing I will tell you is Meraki doesn't have anything in terms of zones per se. So if you looked at my firewalling videos, whether what platform I put it on, most of them you see zones, like secure firewall zones, Palo Alto zones, Fortinet, you can create zones, stuff like that. With the Meraki platform, they don't have zones. They really do it on the network per se. So I had to create do have a guest network, so I'm blocking guests to talk to anything from an internal or VoIP standpoint. But as you can see, there's no source zone. All right. And what you also see is obviously there's the default rule to get out to the internet and stuff like that. But again, inbound rules are going to be dictated by these forwarding rules here. Now you notice I don't have any really layer 7 rules here. I haven't really applied any layer 7 stuff. And the reason I have not done that is because I have this integrated with Umbrella, and I'm doing all of my inspection and SSL decryption and stuff like that. I'm doing that all in the cloud. Again, why this allows you to get a smaller box and do all the heavy lifting in the cloud. This is the benefits of something like secure access or something like Zscaler or something like Prisma Access or any kind of SASE on top of something allows you to offload some of those other critical functions to the cloud where they have way more processing power than your own box equipment. And you can say that, and I'll show you what that looks like here. If I go to VPN status, and then I have two IPsec peers here, and one's going to primary and one's going to the secondary. But now the secondary is down because obviously my health check didn't go down, so I'm not switching over. So from a routing perspective, look at the route table. Where's my routes? Oh yeah. So OSPF and BGP, because I'm not doing a single VLAN, that is not going to work. So that's where you run into some issues. But let's go to addressing and VLANs. Obviously, I'm in routed mode. Now you can do this thing called a pass-through or VPN concentrator, but I'm not doing that. So what that is basically it's only going to do the VPN functionality, the site-to-site VPN functionality and the RE VPN functionality, and nothing else. There's no routed mode. Um, Now, this is the networks that I currently have. I do have a group policy on here, but these are the current networks I have. Nothing really crazy here. Again, guests can't talk to corporate or VoIP. I should have probably put Meraki management in there as well. And the Meraki management one is for when I put a switch in, it will grab an IP address from that table or from the DHCP server so that it can connect to the cloud. For route tables, that's what I meant to click, not routing per se. So it's going to fetch the route table here. And as you can see, I have my default route that technically gets me out to the internet for the WAN uplink because I don't have two yet. I just put one in there. And then I have another route that's going to the Meraki going to Umbrella Tunnel. And then I have a secondary route going to the second tunnel. Now, I've already tested this out on my lab computer in the back. I am actually going through New York's data center for Umbrella. So all my stuff is going through Umbrella. And I didn't have the cert on there. So I was running into SSL decryption problems because I didn't have the Umbrella root cert on there. Once I put it on there, everything was working perfectly fine. And we can, internet is working like it's supposed to. Now, again, if I was somebody to put Meraki in, and I didn't want to spend money on like the advantage licenses for stuff like the SSL decryption stuff like the more categories, stuff like DNS and stuff. All that stuff, just go get you secure access or umbrella or something like that integrated into the Meraki platform. Now you can do this on a per network basis, right? So if you have 10 networks, you have to do your integration on all 10 of those networks. Okay. So you have to be careful. This is not a one size fit all kind of thing. But once you got all that done, you pretty much can control. Again, this is no matter where you are, you're secure, right? So if you're at the headquarters, SASE is protecting you. If you're at Starbucks on a laptop, SASE is going to protect you. If you're at a branch, SASE is going to protect you. So that's the whole point. One rule overall. Okay. From a monitor perspective, we go to network wide. You see the clients, so I can actually see what clients are currently connected. And again, it should be one machine here. If I click in here a little bit more, gives me a little bit more detail. Connectivity shows you exactly. I like this part now. Again, Ubiquiti does the same thing with their topology, but I like the way Meraki does it as well. It tells you exactly what machine is, what port I'm actually plugged into. So that's port 3. And then it tells you port 1 is connected to my MX's, and it's connected to my MX primary. I have two firewall rules here. It gives you a lot of data, a lot of data. And as with any kind of security, kind of anything, visibility is key. So if you can't see it, you don't know what's going on, you pretty much are throwing a guess up in the air because you can't see anything. But with this Meraki platform, it pretty much gives you everything you need to know from a VLAN perspective. It tells you corporate. Now the other thing, let me talk about this because I want to get this out the way. The way you do VLANing on Meraki switches, that's not how you do it normally. And that will trick up a lot of people that are used to doing VLAN this, name this, stuff. That's not how it works in Meraki at all. So you have to be careful doing that. And again, this is an overview video, so I can get deep into the Meraki space if you want to make videos. If you want me to make more videos about that, just let me know. The good part about here, you can do packet captures directly from where the client is. So to do a packet capture on like port 3, so we can see the actual data. So if I pick packet capture here, tells me exactly where I want to go. You can put your filters, any kind of thing, and start the capture there, which is cool. You can do it on multiple switches. You can tell what port it's supposed to be on. So I do port 3 in this. You can save it to the cloud, or you can download it, do a quick view. Again, intelligent capture gives you a lot more. This is more stuff that Meraki allows you to do. Um, Before Meraki, in the first iteration, wasn't this verse, but again, they've been around the longest. So now they've improved and they're the leader in the cloud campus market because of this. Again, this is where your licensing fees go to R&D to make the environment and the ecosystem better. So this is why I say don't complain about having to pay for the licensing, because when you want those new features or you want this is where that money goes to R&D, putting out new features. Now, from a topology perspective, we'll go back to network wide and we'll go to topology. Now, am I a big fan of the way they do topology here? No, I think Unify does it a little bit better. I don't like the fact that they just put it in this little small, how small this is. From a layer 3 perspective, you can see the networks that are coming off of here. So it tells you the networks, which is perfectly fine here. And then from a layer 2 perspective, it tells you, hey, you have your two firewalls and you're connected to this switch. I just don't like it that it's this small. There has to be a way to, make this a lot bigger. So I can see, like when I showed you from the ubiquity standpoint, it showed you the whole tree and it was a lot bigger than that. So Meraki or Cisco, if you can fix this to make it a lot bigger, because I haven't seen a way to expand this, um, please do, because this is just unacceptable in my opinion from a GUI standpoint. For switching, so for switching, again, there's no way to configure a VLAN here. All right. So if we went to, I'll give you port profiles. I'll just do that right now. So port profiles, and this is what I did on the Access. I did the Access port profile. I suggest if anybody's running Meraki, you should do port profiles so you don't have to keep doing the same configurations over and over and over. Taking this like, templates, right? Templates that you would do on a catalyst switch. So if you go to your access port, and as you can see, I said it's an access port. The access policy is open, so there is no 802.1x here. Now, from a VLAN perspective, you just put the numbers in, and on the back and behind the scenes, it creates the VLAN. That's where people get tricked up. They look around in Meraki like, where do I create VLANs? You don't do that in Meraki. You just give it you state the number of the VLAN, it creates it on the background. I enabled BPU guard because I don't want switches going in there, and some storm control stuff. Now, I don't have SGT capabilities yet because I didn't push SGTs or adaptive groups, which is Meraki's version of SGTs, adaptive group policies. Do a video on that once I start setting that up. And then you're done. And then you apply it to your ports. You go to your ports. Once you got your port profile, you go to your switch ports, and then if you want to do something, you go to edit. I already did it already, but you go to edit, and as you can see, you put the port profile name in there, and then it just copies everything that you just did. And you can do this on multiple ports if you want to. Obviously, you see port 3 is where my one device is actually plugged into. Organizational stuff is where you want to do firmware updates, anything that has to do with the organization. You want to do API integration, any kind of config syncs, cameras, sensor role, anything that has to do with the organization. That's what you would put on here. Now, something new here is VRFs. This allows you to chop up the routing table. Everything is in the default right now, but if I wanted to create a new VRF and put networks in there, those two routing tables technically couldn't see each other if I wanted to do that. Most people don't do VRFs in Meraki, but they give you the feature to do that. Automation kind of goes with workflows, variables, infrastructure as code kind of stuff. If you want to start getting that, and since Meraki is technically cloud native, they do very well when it comes to infrastructure as code. Um, but most of the time, people do configuration templates, right? Because infrastructure as code is fairly new um, for Meraki, so it's better to just do templates as of right now if you're going to do it. And what templates are is just it sounds just like what it sounds like. You click create template. You can copy everything from the lab, or you can just create brand new and then give it a name, and then you create your networks and everything like that. Allows you to stage equipment before it gets there, and then when it gets there, you just push the template to it. So, with that being said, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the Meraki platform, uh, how it compares to Unify, where you see it from a design perspective in most enterprise networks. Again, they're going to be at the access layer. The fact that now you can take a C9300 catalyst switch and you can manage it in Meraki is a great thing. But it does have some limitations. Again, if you go to Meraki mode, manage mode completely, you lose CLI access and you have to do everything from the Meraki. So whatever limitations that Meraki has, you are now going to have to deal with those limitations. From an AP perspective, the new C91 whatevers can either run in normal WLC mode, which you control that through DHCP, or it can run in Meraki. So now you can buy one AP that can be managed by either or, which is a great thing. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like I said before, please don't forget to share, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing more videos, waiting for this AP to come so I can put an AP and show where that's going to go to. And I might get my hands on Access Manager, which is Meraki Ice Light. All right, it's ice, but it's not ice. So it's a lighter version of ice that is for Meraki alone, right? So people that don't want to buy Cisco Ice and deal with the things that come with deploying Cisco Ice in an environment, and they want just a trimmed down version of ice that only does the some of the features of ice, but it's only features they need, which is securing people getting on their network, then you're going to go to Access Manager. So if I can get my hands on that and build a network with Access Manager, Cisco throw me a license, man. I'm only joking, but I'm not. Um, yeah, if I can get my hands on Access Manager and then configure it in here, then I'll create a video on that as well. This is Don from this is Don from Padlock Technologies again. Thank you, and have a nice day.